I think we should fold one more in here. Penn State had a big pickup from the portal realm yesterday in the sense that their need at defensive tackle went down big time.
Oh my gosh, I
Mhm.
forgot. Yes, I forgot to bring that up at the
That was
beginning of the
up in the
show.
rundown, and
Yeah.
we should have talked about it earlier. But Dvon Ellies coming back is big. Like,
Yes.
Penn State, if you mocked out their 2024 defensive tackle look, it's obvious why Penn State needed to go after some guys in the portal. Went after Aeneas Peebles. He ended up at Virginia Tech, or committing to Virginia Tech. I thought he was going to go back to Duke, but that's a whole other story. But that they definitely had a need there, especially when Alonzo Ford is a bit of a question mark coming off of that injury, and Jordan Vandenberg, the reserves that you had, feel pretty good about Izzard, feel pretty good about Zane Durant, but getting Dvon Ellies back, who he's one of those guys when you watch the game and says, hey, this guy's pretty good this year. Like, it's not a sense that he's going to go in there and have 7 or 8 sacks, but like every time you watched him, that's a pretty solid player. And considering what we saw in the portal and what we've seen in terms of guys juggling things like that, like getting a guy like Dvon Ellies back that's a portal win to me. Like, that is a situation where you sort of Deion Barnes is probably pretty happy right now, because you know what you're getting, you know exactly how to use him, you know his strengths, his weaknesses, as opposed to bringing a new guy in. Not saying that Aeneas Peebles couldn't have been Derek Tangelo revisited, but like that's a situation where you find yourself very happy that the retention is better than a portal win, in my opinion, on that one. So Dvon Ellies coming back, absolutely huge. I think he's a really good player. I think he's I think he's going to be a captain next year. He's going to be a guy that you love having around your defensive line as your defensive line transitions away from Adisa and Chop. And it gives you an opportunity to sort of reshuffle and go with it. I don't want to call it a reload. I don't want to call it a rebuild or whatever. But a reshuffling is probably the that we were going with Dvon Ellies, because he's a quality player. He stepped up his game a lot this year, and I think he can continue to do so. And he's one of those guys that we talked about for that 1 year initiative of guys that were not going to be first 2-day draft picks. If you can get those guys back and you can make an effort to do so, I think it's going to go a long way. Now, he'll be in the college program for a long time. I'm not sure what his pro prospects will end up being, but we've seen at the college level, he can be a pretty good player. So I'm very encouraged by that. I'm really happy. This is a guy that, I mean, if you watched the post game for the Peach Bowl, Dvon Ellies sat on that bench maybe longer than anybody. Like, he was just kind of looking around. And I thought, based on what we heard after the season, he was going to, check out his options and see what what was available to him, not so much in the portal, but as a draftable player. So, you kind of look at that and say, this guy's going to really help you out in 2024, maybe more so than a new face. So I think it's a very, very good pickup in terms of retention for Penn State.
I'm so impressed with his development this past year, because I think back to the Rose Bowl and watching his film in that game and being like, if this is Penn State's veteran coming back, especially as kind of the primary run stuffer, I was like, that doesn't look great, like on paper and from the film. And it was this year, I don't want to say a totally different player, but he was just better in every single aspect. Better conditioning, his body type was better. He was consistently resetting the line of scrimmage on the other side in the backfield. And just like those little things coming back again as that kind of primary run stuffer. You got Zane Durant, a smaller body. You want some developments from some guys behind him, but he gives you that buffer now that he's going to be on the roster. And I would not have thought that a year ago, that he would be such a pivotal guy to come back last year, and you get him for a bonus year. I think it's a huge testament to his development and the development that Penn State puts into their players, that they genuinely give these guys the tools to get better if they want to go out and get better and put that in themselves.
He had a very good offseason last year, and I wrote about it during the offseason. Is he turned from a guy that was just, back into the rotation guy to a guy that they thought could, be a player. Like, and does that mean starter? Does that mean heavy end of the rotation? I think he started 6 games this season, started the bowl game, but he really, really came on in the latter portion of his career, which I think is interesting when you take a look at the overall dynamic of the roster. Some young guys that, potentially, I think this is probably a guy that a lot of people wrote off as just a guy, and he was able to come through and be a player for Penn State. So important to remember, these guys get better. Like, we want to latch these guys down after their freshman and sophomore years and say this is the player that they're always going to be. Dvon Ellies is a good example of a guy that really got better in the latter portion of his career.
He had his best game in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah,
I thought that was his best game of the season. I mean, only 4 tackles and whatnot. I don't know if it got the credit it deserved
I thought during the end
statistically.
of the season, man, if they could get him back, that would be great. And it seemed like it was heading in the other direction. Then all of a sudden, pull a 180, and it's a good 180 for Penn State.
I thought he was draftable. I mean, maybe like you said, not in the top 2 rounds, but he went from a guy that I did not think had NFL prospects to somebody like, if you're playing that physical, there's a role for you in the NFL. Doesn't matter if you're going to be end of the roster, you're going to be on the roster because you're providing a lot of things that the NFL needs, and being able to stop the run and being kind of a specialist there, that is a role in the NFL, even if you're not Aaron Donald or something like that.
And selfishly covering Penn State, like, he's a great kid to have out in front of your program. Like, he's going to fill the leadership void that I think we saw this year. So it's going to be a guy that you want to have around your building. He's a guy that you always want to put in front of a microphone, have around your building. It's a great win for Penn State there.